It was late in the second day of Season 11's community weekend, and the gold had been flowing. After a long weekend of hourglass grinding and pop-up plunder hunting, most crews were winding down their journeys on the seas. However, the Inquisitor, a brigantine, was just getting started. Their goal? Make some serious merchant moolah by doing one of the highest value merchant voyages they could, an Ashen Lost shipment. This voyage would have them start in the Devil's Roar and follow a series of clues to a location of a hidden shipwreck filled with plenty of loot. It's a seemingly straightforward voyage that this crew managed to do on hard mode. More on that to come. At the helm, and the captain of the Inquisitor, was the skeleton, Jack. Jack has gotten his sea legs through hourglass battles, and sees himself as the crew's offensive force. You can respect him, or you can take a cannon to the face. Those are your only two options when dealing with Captain Jack. A captain is nothing without his crew, and Jack's crew is made up of an odd couple, the Banana Heads, or Mr. B and Mrs. B as they prefer to be known. Mrs. B keeps the crew on task, organized, and moving along. Mr. B, the presumed significant other of Mrs. B, is the heart of the Inquisitor, and a true comedic tour de force. His life motto is, "It's never a bad time to fish." As Sea of Thieves is cyclical, and all things should start exactly how they end, they begun their journey to find a shipwreck by looting a shipwreck. Mrs. B had narrowly dodged a shark while climbing back up onto the ship. An impressive dodge, but one that might come back to haunt her and the rest of the crew of the Inquisitor later. After raiding the shipwreck, Jack and Mrs. B got the Inquisitor sailing towards their next voyage checkpoint. Mr. B, in the meantime, was downstairs sleeping while standing up. Mrs. B tried to wake him by cooking his favorite foods right next to him, seared, unseasoned shark and meg meat, but it unfortunately did not wake Mr. B. The Inquisitor arrived to its next voyage stop, Q18, where Mrs. B wanted to show the world a magic trick, where she made this crate appear out of thin air. She also picked up their next voyage clue, which was going to direct them to Crow's Nest Fortress. Getting anything at Crow's Nest Fortress, though, was going to be very difficult for them, because a Fort of Fortune, an uncommon spawning fort that features a gauntlet of skeleton enemies, was now activated and live at Crow's Nest Fortress. The Inquisitor crew is one that does everything with purpose, and that's something that makes this crew a cut above the rest. Even when parking their boat, Captain Jack worked so hard to get it into the spot that he felt it needed to be in. With Mr. B now vanished into the space between reality and the Sea of Thieves, Mrs. B and Jack as a duo got the clue for their voyage and began to work on the Fort of Fortune. The Fort of Fortune features a variety of skeleton types: shadow skellies, gold skellies, players dressed as skellies, skellies recklessly lighting kegs, skellies recklessly dying to kegs. It was all there. None of those skeletons stood a chance though, as for every variety of skellies there was, Mrs. B and Jack had a way to splash, explode, shoot, and cannon their way through each and every wave. They also tried to put into effect a strategy of saving kegs for the final boss. That's what they were going to try to do, and the keyword here is try. About 7 waves in, Mr. B reappeared on the Inquisitor and decided to live up to his life motto. Once Mr. B actually joined the fort, things sped up exponentially. Not because 3 pirates are better than 2, but because things are a lot easier when you have someone willing to sacrifice themselves over and over, which is what happened to Mr. B. Whether intentional or not, he was doing his crew a real solid. Finally, Warden Chi appeared, the Ashen Lord, the final boss, and with no more kegs left within a 50 nautical mile radius of the island, the crew of the Inquisitor enacted their Plan B, which Captain Jack had already gotten the ship into position for. This plan was to go full tank and cannon Warden Chi to death. This was a great plan on paper, but just like paper, the Inquisitor is very flammable, and the Warden's signature move was the Fireball 5000. This led to one of the most bonkers and back-and-forth Ashen Lord battles I've ever seen, and I honestly had no idea who was going to come out on top. After about 15 minutes of tanking meteor toss after meteor toss, the Inquisitor moved out of the way of the Warden's attacks. With Mrs. B fixing up the ship, Mr. B and Jack cannoned to the island to hand the Warden to death. However, priorities quickly shifted when one of the rarest encounters in the game, the Ancient Skeleton, appeared. The Ancient Skeleton is a random spawn that, if killed in the limited time it's standing, will provide players with ancient coins, meaning it's the closest thing to making real money in Sea of Thieves that you can get. But could they kill it in time? The Ancient Skeleton was on the run. He bolted and he ran directly into Captain Jack's sword. Nothing feels better than guaranteed coin. And with the burst of adrenaline from the Ancient Skelly, it was time for Mr. B to go to town on the Warden. The Warden blasted him with flames, but Mr. B, wielding the sea's sharpest spatula, used his signature move, the burger flip. Mr. B slapped Warden Chi silly. Finally, one last pistol shot from the captain led the killing blow to Warden Chi, resulting in Warden Chi evaporating into thin air. Something funny the crew of the Inquisitor prefers to do is to very meticulously sort all loot that they get into the center of their ship, sorting it all into two piles, two distinct piles, a pile for one-handed items and a pile for two-handed items. Having spent a solid block of time on the Fort of Fortune, the crew now aimed to finish what they had started what felt like long ago. Time to locate and clear out the sunken merchant ship. And because they had found the key to the captain's quarters at Crow's Nest Fortress, they didn't need to go to any more clues and were able to head straight to the location. Captain Jack was ready to get to the destination. Until he saw something. Passing Cutlass K, Captain Jack bolted to his anchor, threw it down, and almost as quickly tossed his body overboard. There was something he found that he felt he couldn't live without. He raced through the small island's maintained jungle to emerge to the washed-up ammo crate guarded by one of his kind, a blunderbuss-wielding Skelly. Scared to try and match that firepower, he took the crate and ran, dodging first the blunderbuss skeleton, but then deadly venomous snakes. He dodged left and right and barrel rolled, and next thing you knew, we were being harpooned by Mrs. B back onto the Inquisitor. A heist of all heists, Captain Jack had pulled it off. With the ammo crate secured, they moseyed over to the flock of seagulls just north of Plunder Outpost and began to loot their sunken merchant ship. It was time to dive under and take what was rightfully theirs. Remember the shark that almost devoured Mrs. B at the first shipwreck? Well, it was clear that shark and its family had been waiting for an opportunity to get revenge, because with 3 sharks now swimming around the sunken ship, getting back onto the Inquisitor from the water proved to be difficult. Most of the loot got sorted into their respective piles, however, one piece of loot didn't get put into either of those 2 piles. Being so close to Plunder Outpost, the crew of the Inquisitor took a gamble by placing a stronghold keg on their bow. The stronghold keg would have enough power to sink the whole ship in a matter of seconds if it were to be set off. While there were no enemy ships in sight, a PvE threat such as a skeleton sloop or megalodon spawning on the Inquisitor was not impossible. They held their collective breaths all the way to the Sovereigns at Plunder Outpost, where for whatever reason, the crew trusted Mr. B to run the stronghold keg in. It was an odd choice considering Mr. B's history with kegs on this adventure. But he proved his haters wrong and got it in without issue. In just such a short amount of time, this crew had gone through it all and made plenty of gold. But at the end of the day, the real prize wasn't all the gold they earned. Nor was it the glory. Not even the friends, because I think they were already friends to begin with. No, the real prize was encountering the rarest thing of all. Not the ancient Skelly, I'm talking about that ammo crate. Thanks so much for joining along, everyone, and stay tuned because there's plenty more adventures to be shared from the sandbox that is Sea of Thieves.